Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're going to be talking about civic engagement in local politics. Joining me is So Lim, who is a first-time candidate running for Fairfax City Council. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So 6 years ago, I was also a first-time candidate for the Fairfax City Council. It's a journey not many people have ever embarked on, running for any office, much less a local office. And so I've kind of walked in your shoes, and I'm very interested in 6 years later, what you're hearing and what your experience has been going out and introducing yourself to the people in Fairfax and making them aware we have an election.
Yeah, well, since I announced my candidacy, I've been knocking on doors every single day, rain or shine, right?
Right.
And at first, of course, I was ambivalent. I was scared to knock on doors, but I was very happy to find that people of City of Fairfax are very nice. They're warm and friendly. Some ladies almost cook me dinners, So it's been very pleasant, and I'm finding common issues and common concerns, which are traffic, development, density, too much development, traffic again, and the walkability and the public safety of our citizens of Fairfax. And I also find that people are very concerned, and they all love the city. So I actually decided if I get elected, I will continue to knock on doors and be very proactive and knock on your doors and hear their concerns and issues, and I will bring it to the table of the City Council and try to resolve their issues very proactively.
Well, and I think that's important because what you find when you do the walk list, and basically you have a list of people who voted in municipal elections before. So it's not like you're knocking on every single door in the city. You're targeting people who voted before, but that's a really small number of people who live there. So beyond this maybe 1,200 people out of maybe 24,000 people who live in the city, what have you found as far as just talking to people like in your neighborhood about this May 1st election?
Yeah, I decided to walk on more doors, people that may have voted in the last delegate race, rather than honing on just the city council race. And I'm very surprised to find so many of them we have an election in May? That's their first response. And I would ask, have you voted for city council in the past? And they said no, they never did it. And they have no idea how many council members we have, who's on the council, what even city council does. So I think that we need to do a better job of getting more citizens involved, more engaged. We have 24,000 citizens living in the city of Fairfax, and yet less than 10% votes on the city council. What city council does really affects their daily lives, right? What happens in their backyards. I think that we need to do a much, much better job of getting more people, more citizens involved.
Well, so when people say, and people will tell you, I vote in every election. And what they mean is, I vote every 4 years for president.
Right.
In Virginia, we have elections every single year.
That's right.
Every year, because we have an off-year governor's race, there's Congress every year, there's the Senate races. So when people say I vote every time, a lot of times they really don't realize there's elections every year in November. But as far as May elections, there's towns around us who've changed their municipal elections from May to November. Falls Church City's one of them, Herndon Town Council's one of them. There's not been much discussion in Fairfax City about moving our elections to November, where every single year we've already got more people coming to the polls. From your perspective, is that something that should be considered to have higher participation?
Yeah, I thought about that. In fact, many people actually have said your first job as a city council should move our election to November.
From May,
yeah,
right?
From May to November. And I also would like to challenge, right? Because there's really no specific way to get more people engaged and participate in the voting process in May. So if we do it in November, obviously more people would come out, right? They're concerned about who their congressman is, who their delegate and the state senator is. So we would have obviously more turnout in November. And then also it would reduce the city's expense. For a city to have 6 precincts open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., that obviously costs us money. So I would challenge the system and have the election happen in November rather than in May.
Well, like I said, that this is something to save money is one thing, but generally it's to get more people to participate, because a lot of people who are very happy, and I live in the city, and I'm very happy with the way the city's run. I'm happy with my taxes. So that kind of leads to complacency. When people are pretty much happy, there's not really a need for them to go to City Hall or attend the meetings or to watch them on television. And by the way, they can watch the City Council meetings every other Tuesday on television. But very few people take advantage of that because they're happy, for the most part, until something happens.
That's right. That's right. I mean, everybody's consensus is they love living in the city. But currently, City of Fairfax have many development issues, many redevelopment, road constructions, traffic, so they do complain about that. But I think that possibly by having an election in November, then it's a responsibility, right, of the citizens to get to know their candidates and get to be more concerned about the city and what does the City Council actually do, right? They would have to do more research to find out the agendas for the candidates. And I think that we would have definitely more people more engaged in their civic duties as a citizen of the city of Fairfax.
So let's talk about, the people who live in the city who don't normally participate in just civic things in general. And so Scott Silverthorne talked about this years ago when he talked about the fact that about 40% of our city is diverse. They come from lots of different countries and backgrounds and ethnic groups. But we don't necessarily see them, at many of the things in the city, like city council meetings or the swearing in. What is a way to try to help people understand that we are an inclusive, welcoming city, and people should come and participate in the things that the city, like Rock the Block. We're doing more civic things than we've ever done before.
Yeah, in fact, Scott was the first person that actually made me think about running as a city council, because he had suggested, hey, you should run for city council. I think that he was more keyed in on getting more diversity into the council. But I think that as my first job as a city council would be to have International Day, perhaps call it International Festival, to really embrace all different ethnicity that live in the city of Fairfax, bring in different culture and showcase their music, their shows, their food, all different cultural items to be showcased in the festival. I think that would be a great opportunity for different community leaders to come out and meet the city of Fairfax leaders, right?
Right.
And get to be more involved in the city by becoming committee members or possibly run as a city council down in the future.
And there is actually a festival that exists I belong to the Rotary Club of Centerville and Chantilly. And on April 21st, they're hosting the 8th annual International Showcase at the Korean Presbyterian Church. So for 8 years, the Centerville Immigration Forum has brought together people from India and Korea and Peru and South America and Ireland. And it's a celebration of culture and music and food. But it is a place for people from all over the Centerville community to get to know one another. So this has been done successfully, just not necessarily in Fairfax City. But I agree with you. It's a great way to bring people more fully into the community and also to help them understand how boards and commissions work, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, our diverse population is growing, right? It's not going anywhere. We're here to stay. And I think that it would be a great opportunity to get them out, participate, get engaged in the city festival, as well as meet other Fairfax City people that may not even know we have diversity. We keep talking about it, but they may not know anybody that has a diverse background. It'll be a great opportunity to meet them, get engaged, and get them to participate in civic duties living in the city of Fairfax. As well as, just we have to be a big mixing pot, just have to embrace all different cultures, and I think it would be a great opportunity.
Well, I think we have to be proactive about it. And another thing that Scott Silverthorne had done is bring Walter Tejada in from Arlington. He did actually a forum on diversity and explained what Arlington had done. And it was at the Sherwood Center. I don't even know how many years ago it was. It was very well attended. And people came. I think people were like, this is a great idea. How do we get more people involved? But then after it was over, nothing really moved forward. And I think it's important because people don't understand that the Planning Commission, the Economic Development Commission, the Parks and Rec Commission, there's a Women's Commission in Fairfax City. All of them would benefit from a more inclusive, diverse set of participants. But I don't, how we bring the people together and let them know that this is one way you engage in government.
Yeah, I think that, people that are leaders or influential in the city of Fairfax, they like to embrace diversity, but they may know maybe one or two, someone with the background with diversity. But me, having the diverse background and having served as the president for the Korean American Association of Greater Washington, I've worked with many different AAPI organizations that I could connect, regroup those leaders together to bring this International Day, International Festival to the city of Fairfax.
And let's talk a little bit about the fact that you started your business back in 1992. You own an insurance agency, a very large, successful insurance agency here in Fairfax City. The fact of the matter is, your youngest child was 4 months old.
Yeah.
4 months old when you started your own business, which is a pretty brave thing to do. But having someone with your background and your perspective and your lived experience helping to create a city that's more welcoming to other young womenpreneurs or entrepreneurs or women who might have small children who wouldn't necessarily think of starting their own business in Fairfax City. I just think the fact that you've done that and you've done it successfully, is a way of helping our city to develop policies that are welcoming.
Yeah, you're right. I was very brave starting my own business when my second son was 4 months old. But it has given me an opportunity to be my own boss, right? Being my own manager, being my own owner of the workplace. And my kids literally grew up in the office. They were at the office every single day, and I had like part-time nursing students to come in and look after my sons when I had to do work. And of course, insurance agency, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a lot of work in the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork. During the day, I would be selling, and at night, I would be doing all the processing of all the paperwork. So my kids literally grew up in the office. So I understand if there are many other women entrepreneurs that like to start their business, but they're not brave enough to do it because they're still growing children in the house and they have to take care of household items. I would completely understand. I could be the mentor, the leader to guide them through it.
Well, that's fantastic. And when we come back from this break, we're going to talk more with So Lim, who is running for Fairfax City Council.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Find fun activities to do, like boating and biking, or camping and hiking, plus much more. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me today is So Lim, who is a candidate running for Fairfax City Council. Thank you so much for joining me. So let's talk a little bit about George Mason University. When I first came to this area, it was as a sophomore in 1981, and I moved into the first dorms that were ever built on that campus, which was October of 1981. So up to that point, it was a commuter school. And so it sits right at the end of University Drive in Fairfax City, and yet we have a lot of empty storefronts in our city. We have, You know, we don't see students in our city. We have grappled for a long time with the city's relationship with George Mason University. You know, how are you seeing these things as connected?
I'm definitely having the George Mason 30,000 students in our backyard, literally, is a great asset for City of Fairfax. So we need to do a better job of bringing those students to our downtown, to patron our restaurants, our retail spaces, to something special, right? Something has to be beneficial for the students to come to our city. For example, like Fairfax Corner offers shuttle buses to students to come to their shopping mall, and University Shopping Center offers discounts at their stores. So we have to do something, right? And our downtown Fairfax is walkable. So we need to make them more walkable, bike safer, maybe perhaps looking into having a bike share program between university and downtown Fairfax so that kids can ride the bikes. And I think George Mason students could offer many other opportunities for us in the city of Fairfax, like possible internship programs for the businesses that are in the city of Fairfax that could offer internship program to George Mason. And then George Mason students can offer a mentorship program to our 4 schools that we have in the city of Fairfax.
Right, and you were saying, I think, too, that there are possible Korean companies who might want to engage with the city simply because we have a university right next door, which kind of makes sense if you're doing economic development, not just for retail, but it's like, what businesses can we bring to Fairfax City, and how does our proximity to the university enhance that?
You know, George Mason has a great program for international businesses to come and incubate. So our work with George Mason and the economic development authorities to possibly looking into bringing technology firms from overseas. So I've already reached out to small to medium-sized technology companies in Korea to come to Korea and incubate their businesses abroad here in the US. And also, I want to build a sister relationship with different cities from around the world so that we can attract different businesses from all over the world to make home here in the city of Fairfax.
And that makes sense because we are a small city in the middle of a huge county. And you know, the quality of life in Fairfax City is such that people want to live there, right? But one of our challenges, I think, is housing, and it's the range of housing or the lack of a range of housing, whether it's students who are graduating from the university and would like to stay in the city, or seniors who are living in houses they've lived in for 40 years and no longer need that much space, but there's no smaller place for them in the city to downsize to. So 10,000 people a day are turning 65 in this country. We have a lot of seniors in Fairfax City. So, you know, how can we look at building the diversity of housing that meets the many needs of the people who want to be in the city?
Yeah. The different housing option is definitely a challenge for us in the city. We talked about diversity earlier. I think for us to be embracing diversity, we must offer diversity in housing options, not just for graduating students that are graduating from George Mason University, as well as seniors that are looking into retirement, looking into smaller property. We do have many garden apartments, but every time I visit to knock on doors, we have to deal with stairs, right? So obviously, senior citizens who are looking into moving into smaller place, those garden apartments are not option. And currently, we only have the Providence Square, which offers luxury condominiums.
Yes, I live there, so I can tell you, it's one of a very unique property in the city.
Right, exactly. But obviously, the cost would be an issue.
Right, it would be an issue. And you know, we have workforce. We have teachers and firefighters and firemen and all kinds of people who work in service industries in the city who live outside Fairfax County even because it's so unaffordable. So building housing and giving options so that we're scattering people of all different kinds of economic background and jobs throughout the city seems to me would be an excellent goal.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been talking to firefighters and paramedics association, the police association, and I asked them, right, do you live in the city? Because I'm asking for votes, right? And they all said no, they would love to, but they live in Haymarket, Gainesville, even out to Front Royal, and they're having to drive on a daily basis to come and work in the city. So I think that, again, for us to embrace diversity, we must offer housing diversity as well.
Yeah, that meets lots of different needs. And I think traffic continues to be something that people complain about. And, you know, and from my point of view, it's kind of like, if you don't want people or a lot of cars in the city, then offering bike lanes, bike share, and better sidewalks might be an option. And I don't hear people who are passionate about sidewalks in the city. I happen to be passionate, but I'm not sure I'm seeing a connection where people are like, if we had other alternatives, building high-density housing wouldn't just translate into, oh my goodness, we are going to have even more cars.
Yeah, I mean, sidewalks definitely an issue. I live in the Farcroft, and I sometimes walk to my office, which is on Oldley down Fairfax Circle, and I'm having to constantly cross the street to find sidewalks. So sidewalk is definitely an issue, but I also find that there are people that are perfectly content and happy not having sidewalks because they may not want that congestion. I don't know how many people would actually walk in the city of Fairfax if city sidewalks were offered, but still, some people don't want it. So I think that we have to look at supply and demand, right? And the cost and effect. So cost and benefit. So we would definitely have to build better sidewalks, especially into those retail spaces that not only City of Fairfax residents can walk to, but definitely for George Mason students to be able to walk to.
You know, and as somebody who walks in the city, because I live in Providence Square, which is right downtown, you know, Roberts Road doesn't have adequate sidewalks from Main Street to the campus on Roberts Road. Trying to walk from University all the way down to Fairfax Boulevard, you have to cross back and forth on University to get there. So, you know, if this was New York City, 6 square miles would mean people would laugh at getting in your car, right? Like, laugh at the fact that why would you get in your car if you only have to walk like this many miles? But in Fairfax City, cars have been the default. It's part of our culture. And while people hate the zooming of traffic especially in the downtown, which makes walking not easy or safe, I'm not seeing people connecting the dots as far as then why aren't we putting better engineering, resources, and development into sidewalks and walkability.
Yeah, I mean, I think that public safety has to be number one in our priority, right? And as I'm walking, some streets that doesn't have any sidewalks, if I'm walking straight up and down the street, it's okay. But if I'm turning corners, especially, and there's speeding cars zooming through the neighborhoods these days, it's not safe at all. And I'm very concerned about the children's safety. Not only that, I also found City of Fairfax residents own dogs, a lot.
A lot of dogs,
Yeah, I mean, literally 1 out of 3 households have dogs, and people are walking their dogs. So I'm very concerned about the public safety of our children and our dogs.
And our dog owners, right?
And dog owners,
I used to walk my dog all the way through Fairchester Woods. And even Fairchester Woods, that's another example of where Fairchester Drive, there's part of it that doesn't have sidewalks, right? So if you're walking your dog, you're just walking on the edge of the road.
Yes.
And as far as I'm concerned, sidewalks are my number one issue. But let's talk about some of the other things that, that people I think are concerned with. We were talking about how to get people engaged with boards and commissions, and lots of different people engaged with boards and commissions, because this is one way that people make a path for themselves to city council. A lot of the people running this year have been on Parks and Rec or on the Planning Commission. But yet if you don't have diversity feeding into your boards and commissions, then can we fully expect that you've got diversity feeding into your city council candidates? So, is there a plan? Can you think of a way that we can reach out to people so they even understand how these boards and commissions function in the city? Because they're volunteer. But even though they're volunteer, they're very important. They make recommendations to the city council. They make recommendations about public policy.
I mean, yes, city council really affects people's daily lives, literally, right? What happens in your backyard, having the tree cut down, for example, wear and tear on the parks and recreation equipment, the playgrounds, right? So people really, I don't think, especially the ones that doesn't really care or get involved or understand what city council does.
They call themselves not political. I'm
Yeah.
not political. It's
Yeah.
like, do you care about snow removal and trash pickup and
Exactly.
potholes? Because
Yeah.
the people who decide how all of those are dealt with is your city council
Yeah.
and your city government.
Right. That's what I've been saying to people. Like I would ask them, "Oh, have you voted in the city council before?" And they say no, and they didn't even wasn't even aware that there was an election in May. And I go, "Did you know city council controls your trash pickup?" And they go, "Really?"
So let's talk about the fact that among Korean voters, you found something extraordinary just among Korean voters. How many
Yeah.
are there in the city?
Yeah, I did a research, and there are over 300 Korean registered voters. And yet, in the last city council election, less than 20 of them voted. So obviously, when there's a new election, like we talked about before, we would knock on doors on past voters.
Right.
So they're not being reached out because their doors are not being knocked, and city council members are not visiting their doors to ask what their concerns and issues are. So definitely this year, I'm knocking on their doors as well and reaching out to them via mail and via other sources.
And the numbers in Fairfax City pretty much mirror the article that was in the New York Times on April 5th about the fact that only 27% of registered Asian American voters actually voted in 2016. 27%. And so it looks like our numbers in Fairfax City are mirroring that.
Yeah.
And it seems that getting more people engaged to understand that their vote is their voice. Is that your message? What is your message here? Right at the very end.
Yeah. I mean, that is my message. When I was the president for the Korean American Association, that was my number one agenda, to get people more engaged in their civic duties and get out and vote. And if you become a U.S. citizen, you should definitely automatically become a registered voter and then get out and vote. And Asian Americans definitely can be a swing vote. And have our representation, right? So in the city council, in the past so many years, we talk about diversity, and yet there has not been anybody that has represented me as the resident of the city of Fairfax that looks like me.
Well, and on that note, we are going to thank you very much for being here, and this is what you need to know. Thank you.